formerly incarcerated, and I'm also miraculously formerly a felon. I spent my childhood sharing a bedroom with my little brother in our home in Arlington, Texas. My father and mother raised me almost exclusively around fine arts, museums, symphony halls, theaters. From first grade through high school, I was placed in accelerated learning programs, selected who's who of high school students, eventually set my heart on going off to study journalism, world religions at University of New York City or New England. I learned at a young age that some choices in life were morally wrong, and every small disciplinary issue I had as a child was always a mistake I learned I did not want to make again. My teenage years, however, I frequented live music venues across DFW, spending time with men and women in the music scene that abused substances. One time I was given a minor in possession by a police officer after my friends and I were found drinking at the mall after dark. My father drove me to jail downtown and showed me where that kind of behavior could lead me. It was a real shock. As I got closer to graduation, acing the SATs, sending in applications to colleges, my ignorant and reckless use of alcohol led to cocaine and Xanax. Things it seemed every cool millennial I knew was doing often. I remember the trauma of attending a few funerals of friends who we had lost to intoxicated driving or pill overdose. I didn't get behind the wheel until I was 17, proceeded to totaling my Honda Accord twice in less than a month, sober both times. I knew I needed to escape to a place where I wouldn't need to worry about the dangers of driving. Every family member I had ever known lived somewhere in Texas, and none of them had ever attained a college degree other than my grandfather, who was a member of fraternity at the University of Austin. My mother and my aunt tried their best to keep me close by, but my father shared in my dream of education at a top school. I only knew my dad to work 50-hour work weeks to provide for our family, and he would work extra hours to get extra funds towards that dream. I had never been to Boston in my life, but I accepted an offer for close to a full ride scholarship to attend Boston University's College of Communications in the fall of 2006. I attended classes with and befriended kids from around the world, but gravitated most to those who were from New York City, Massachusetts, Vermont, who put me on to new styles of live music, including hip hop, reggae, and jam dance. I walked to world-class music venues, and most of my time outside of classrooms was spent writing about music and exploring the city. With no parents to return home to, in an environment where it seemed half the student body was stumbling back to campus wasted most nights, I entered a phase where I drank like an alcoholic and abused cocaine, LSD, psilocybin, Adderall, ecstasy, and even cannabis. I studied and wrote poetry constantly, becoming far too interested in emulating Bukowski, Kerouac, and Hunter S. Thompson. Most of my friends came from well-to-do families who would fly them away on holidays, fill their cards with funds, and pay their rent on their nice apartments. The small dorm rooms I was splitting with random guys that didn't share my interests, and a life spent only on campus quickly became a thing to break away from. I made a few bucks working at the dorm cafeterias as part of the campus catering business. Since I was busy partying and traveling to shows, there was no way I could work full time. I wouldn't be able to afford the rent in a Brookline apartment with my friends. As a social butterfly, selling cannabis and then other party substances and psychedelics across the campus became what felt most like a necessity. The supply was fronted to my friends and I by multiple other older classmates, making it incredibly easy and limiting the danger factor. The next couple of years felt like a crazy train I couldn't get off. Attending more and more music festivals, producing and promoting live music events, creating an online web magazine, and growing an addiction to these substances and the lifestyle. The lies piled up to my family, the hustling and dealing moved beyond campus to parties and events in other states, but I dreamt of being done after graduation in May 2010. I want to add that I believed it was better for my friends to buy substances for me instead of having to go to weird neighborhoods. It wasn't until later that I became conscious of the harm I was perpetuating and how much risk there was in putting people onto cocaine, Adderall, ecstasy, and the like. In March of 2010, I was living in a 5-bedroom party house on Pratt Street in Allston with all my best friends. We supplied substances to music fans and students across the city with the safe full of the bulk substances up on the 3rd floor of my bedroom. One of my roommates was selling opiate pills, one of the few substances I never touched, to a young kid who turned out to be a confidential informant for the BPD. After an undercover had come into the home to buy, they created a warrant to arrest my roommate. On March 25th, 2010, I went to open the front door to meet my local delivery guy, had 10 plainclothes drug cops rush my front and back doors, slamming me to the ground. Something about that moment, knowing that the game I had been playing was over, brought relief. The fear and shock felt while they ran upstairs to round up my roommates and turn our rooms inside out led me to sitting down with the police officer in my kitchen, proceeding to telling them it was my stuff, so no one else was involved. I was so adamant on not informing on anyone I worked with that I sadly guaranteed my own guilt in a way. After one night in a Brighton jail, my friends and family pulled their money together to bail me out. I didn't know how fortunate I was until much later that more than 60% of defendants are detained pre-trial because they cannot afford bail. I was suspended from BU, unable to graduate, and had to try not to cave at the weight of the shame I had felt when my family found out what was really going on. I spent the year visiting a substance abuse counselor, reading about meditation and mindfulness, practicing Muay Thai in case I would have to fight in jail. Fortunately, I never did. I was charged by Suffolk County Superior with over 10 felony counts, including trafficking of cocaine, possession with the intention to distribute cannabis, psilocybin, ecstasy, and multiple school zone charges. Despite it all being my first offense, nonviolent arrest, the DA and their detectives were able to comfortably press me with the potential of 7 years of jail time. My dad used all his savings to pay for a lawyer who ultimately was only able to get me a loosened plea deal of 3 years soft versus 3 in a day, in order to serve time at the county jail in Boston versus going upstate to a prison. I pushed for county because I felt like I wanted my local friends to visit and my family to be able to fly in from Texas. On May 25th, 2011, a year later exactly, I arrived at South Bay Correctional Facility where I served 20 months before I was released on parole. I was incredibly fortunate to not enter jail with any serious dependency to substances, not be associated with any particular town or neighborhood or gang, and to have a large amount of friends from school and the music industry and my family to hold me down. Letters, books, magazines sent in, phone calls, visits, commissary funds. It quickly became clear to me that these blessings were luxuries that so many of my fellow inmates seldomly, if at all. As a college student and a practicing Buddhist, I spent most of my time in South Bay writing a daily journal, attending class meditation programs, teaching GED to other inmates, and eventually earning college credits in a substance abuse counselor program UMass offered to inmates. As a journalist, it was fascinating, intense, and often sad to speak with the inmates from all walks of life that I had befriended and learn about the numerous stories of recidivism and experiences in Massachusetts jails and prisons and juvenile facilities. It was often shocking witnessing the spectrum of correctional officers' treatment of inmates, ranging from decency to abuse, as well as the constant placement of inmates in solitary confinement for even small offenses. It was commonplace to hear about overdoses and some deaths in jail, and even more so to hear of fellow inmates' deaths via overdose upon release. In order to get parole, I was required to spend the last few months of my required time in substance abuse education unit with daily AA and NA abuse or meetings filled with 50 inmates. I watched inmates with substance abuse issues learn and share, but there was something about the program that felt lacking in terms of how effective it would be in really helping men avoid drugs, their drugs of choice when during reentry. I was released on parole 1 year and probation 2 years concurrent in the fall of 2012. I was lucky to have a friend and her mother take me in to live in Winter Hills, Somerville at no cost, helping me avoid going to a halfway house or a similar facility. I was required to travel weekly by train to one office in Cambridge Courthouse, at the Cambridge Courthouse, and another in Quincy, paying fees to both. The first day out, I was unable to pee in a cup while an officer looked on, prompting a call the first night I was on parole explaining I would go back to jail to finish my sentence if I didn't provide a sample the next day. I was able to accomplish that after adding a few gray hairs to my head that day and continue to successfully drug test the following year after that. It was during that time, grappling with the new anxiety and PTSD I experienced back in society, that I felt most afraid and ashamed. I applied for jobs at restaurants and eventually was hired at one in the South End called Myers & Chang, minutes away from South Bay. I did not check the box on my application asking if I had any prior convictions. I kept that for my coworkers and anyone who didn't already know. I stayed at that job for over 2 years until probation ended. I was able to finish my degree at BU. Shout out to Dean Ken Elmore and Dean Daryl DeLuca for their support like family throughout this period of my life. I moved back to Texas for a year where every non-service industry job application I sent in was not even responded to, and then to Denver where I decided that a life as a marketing media entrepreneur was my best option. There I was able to learn about cannabis and CBD as medicine, and the free healthcare I was provided allowed me to access EMDR trauma therapy to focus on processing the emotional trauma I had endured. A year later, in 2017, I got a call from a friend telling me to check out the news about the Annie Dukin drug lab scandal. I called the ACLU and they let me know I was one of the cases that she touched during the time falsifying drug records. I got a job, after that I got a job at a dispensary. I was hired to drive for Lyft. It felt like my higher power wanted me to do what I could the rest of my life to help end the drug war and to support anyone I could who was facing time in jail. Since that time, I've worked in the legal cannabis industry for Clemency magazine in Colorado, Massachusetts, and New York, and was a part of the team who decriminalized psilocybin in Denver and all drug decriminalization in Cambridge. There's so many innovations waiting to be implemented in our country's criminal justice system in terms of how we help those struggling with addiction and the lifestyle of selling substances, how we treat inmates in our prisons, and how we help those inmates reintegrate into their homes. Thank you all for the work you have done and will do to make that future a reality. I'm going to share a poem I wrote in jail. This is called I Will Break This Shadow. I will break this shadow into 1,000 lights of sun. No challenge, no matter the length of intensity, retains the propensity to douse the bonfire that is my will. Relentless and honest is my will to rise up, rise against, rise above. You can go tell them, I won't be silent or flat, won't be bitter, broken. I've already spoken countless times while muzzled, exiled, mouthless, and unable to be heard. Misleading darkness, dimming once, hiding identity. I see it for what it is, oil and cloth, match and paper, lightning and brush. I am illumined inside. My spirit may spontaneously combust, my supernova self on a loop forever, creating against despair, making room for life. There are bright days ahead, days that I will know, days that I will take and make marvelous as pretty gems shining as the lion's mane reflecting the sun. We still have time.